Advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Well, good afternoon. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. What do you guys want to talk about? Know something that needs answered? Have a legal problem, legal situation, neighbor problems, spouse problems, personal injury, got rear-ended, got hit, cousin has a wrongful death, whatever, we'll do it. 540-0580, talk about here on the air. I want to thank the 912 Patriots from Adams County for having me down. I guess we had almost 100 people there on Thursday night where I did a little lecture on gun law. We got some good constitutional discussions going, too. And I got my little pocket constitution out that I carry around with me, which you can see a picture of on Facebook if you want. And we quoted out of it because what the Constitution says, what we think it says, and what courts have said it says aren't always the same thing. And it gets to be fascinating, particularly when you're a bunch of people who truly believe the Constitution has true meaning. So as a result, it makes for a very interesting discourse. We had a great time. I think everybody learned a little from each other. And I enjoyed it a lot. So if you have a group and you want to talk about any issue of law, I've been done a lot of these gun law lectures, and not really a lecture, it's kind of a conversation. I'm not the teacher, I'm just a facilitator. So if you're interested in having me come out and facilitate your group with any issues in the law, whatever it may be you want me to look up and study or what I already know and what we can talk about and learn about together, I'm happy to do that. 540-0580 to get on the air here today. And, of course, if you call in or go to our website, you can request us for those matters as well. Oh, let's see. I guess there was a bombshell in the IRS scandal that's sort of just starting to percolate that the Office of Chief Counsel was involved in steering things against the Tea Party organizations. That came out in congressional testimony. Of course, it's having trouble gathering traction these days with everything else going on. I mean, Paula Deen and her issues. We've talked about that here on the air before. Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman and their issues. Those things have been eating up all the airtime. It's time to get back to what the NSA is up to. And apparently, the NSA also revealed now in some testimony in Congress, oh, yeah, that thing about we only listen to foreigners' communications. Well, we also do what's called triple hopping. So if the foreigner that we're interested in knowing something about talked to somebody else, and that person talked to somebody else, and that person talked to somebody else, we can go out 3 hops without having to get a warrant and listen to those conversations. Which means if... Let's think about this. If a terrorist is working at a small retail business or a lawnmower repair shop or anywhere where he might use a phone that belongs to the company, and he calls your friend who once called you, well, then they're going to listen to your calls too because you're within 3 hops of a phone that person used. So Congress is going to have to grapple with what exactly that means. I think our Constitution is getting a little bruised by the intelligence apparatus. 540-0580. Lois, you're on the air.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
I just need a quick opinion. My sister, who is mentally challenged, had gone through bankruptcy and was discharged from everything in December of 2011.
Okay.
Surrendered her house. Well, she keeps getting tax bills, and now she just got a letter from an attorney saying she owes back taxes for 2012, and they're going to put the house up for sheriff's sale, and she's going to have to pay all these costs. My understanding is she is through with that house, and these letters are just a formality. Is that correct?
Well, was the house listed in the bankruptcy?
Yes.
And what did they do with the title to the house? Does she still have it, or did it...
They've never done anything with it. I mean, as far as I know, she still has it. The bank hasn't came and asked for it or anything else.
Well, I'd have to know what the intent. Usually in the bankruptcy filing, it'll say personal residence and what the intent to do with it is.
Yeah.
And did it say that it was to be sold or deeded back to the bank? Or
yeah. She was supposedly taken off of it or whatever, but she never had to sign any papers
right.
for that unless the paper she signed at the bankruptcy court did that. Because what is it? It was 7 where she was trying to save the house, and then she converted to 13 and gave up the house in it.
Okay, she gave up. Well, in a 13,
she gave up
Yeah, you might have it the backwards. In a 13, she'd probably try to keep the house, and in a 7, she'd have to relinquish it.
Okay, it was 7. That's the way it was, because she had the first one to try to keep it and realized she couldn't, and then we refiled the other one.
My position would be to notify the bank and the taxing authorities that she's no longer the owner and that the bank is supposed to be accepting ownership of it, and get somebody to write up a deed back to the bank or whoever, because technically they're in contempt of the bankruptcy. If in fact, but I've seen this a few times now where somebody files a bankruptcy, it says that the house is going to go back, okay? Or be deeded in lieu of foreclosure or title relinquished back to the creditor, and then nobody does it because the banks, quite frankly, they just I think are trying to see if they can get somebody just to reassume the mortgage.
Well, and I'm sure they don't want this house. It's not in the best section of town. They could sell it for $30,000. They'd be lucky, and there was $118,000 and like 3 different mortgages. People kept lending her more money on it. The
lawyer that sent the letter on the taxes, she may want to contact or have somebody contact him to say, hey. This house was supposed to be going into bankruptcy, so the real creditor that you need to talk to is the bank. Okay, because we did send the bank letters with, certified letters, and we got a return receipt on them, notifying them that, and sent them copies of the discharge paper from the bankruptcy court and everything, trying to cover ourselves. I was trying to help her. Yeah, it seems like you're heading in the right direction. Okay. Well, thanks for your help. It just seems like a little cleanup's necessary, and maybe make the bank at some point say, hey, you guys have to take this. And if you don't want it, we're going to, I don't know, maybe be tricky about it and say we're deeming you abandoned any interest in it. And if you're going to do that, then we'll just sell it. Oh, well, maybe. But, she's 70-some years old, and she couldn't possibly do that. She wouldn't know how to begin. Right. And I live 200 miles away, and I try to help her as best I can. Gotcha. But, that's a problem. It is. It is. Well, she's lucky to have you. Oh, well, thank you. All right. Enjoy the rest of this million degree weekend here. I'm loving it. I'm telling you. I like it warm. Well, I liked it after it rained last night, and it cooled everything down for a little bit. It didn't rain in our area. I live down in York, and we could hear thunder and see lightning, and we didn't get a drop. Oh, yeah. Well, it rained in Carlisle, I'll tell you that. Did it? Oh, yeah. Okay. Cats and dogs and hail. You're taking all our water then. All the farmers are always fighting over the water. Actually, a farmer told me that they don't need any more water. He'd rather have a few dry weeks here. Oh, well, and the rain is so scattered. Yeah, that's part of the problem, because I've heard that too. Yeah. All right, well, you take care. Okay, well, thank you. All right, 540-0580. Shane, I don't have a name on 3 here. John.
Yeah, I have a question about basically freedom of speech and propaganda. Recently saw something about that the government, that buried in the defense appropriation bill from a year ago or something, was something that legalized the ability of the government to send to beam propaganda to us and pay for it with taxpayer money.
Yeah. I know they've been doing that for a long time, let's say less overtly, right?
Well, this says the government can do it and pay for it out of your money, my taxpayer money. So here's how you're going to know that's true, because in about 2 weeks, when the government starts paying me to say that the NSA is swell and your civil rights aren't being bruised in any way, shape, or form, you'll know I'm on the take. Right. And, they're putting advertising on, all kinds of shows. And the other question I had is I saw a White House press conference, part of it, where they were talking about this guy Snowden, and they're saying that they're very disappointed that Russia should give this guy a platform. And the Russian reporter in the audience asked them, why does he lose his right to free speech? Right. And the person said, well, because we charged him with a crime. Well, I didn't know, and they asked him, since when does that cause you to lose your You don't lose your free speech rights per se, but speech is still something that, for national security reasons, could be curtailed, which is the danger with these national security arguments, is everything can be curtailed with it. So, he has a platform because every other country in the world is loving the idea of pointing the finger at the U.S., even though we know some of them do the same things or even worse. Right. But
But I think some of them are liking the fact that the American people have been deluded into believing that everybody else is a police state but us. And now that we may have to confront that, I think there's some schadenfreude out there. But I think the complaint about Putin giving him asylum essentially or de facto, Putin's playing both ends of the fence. Well, I'm sorry, he's in that area of the airport where I can't do anything, so we would like him to leave. But obviously somebody's feeding him and clothing him and protecting him in the meantime.
Right. And, this is, we realize this is all propaganda, and they spy on us and we spy on them. And there was where they threw some diplomat of ours out of the country because they caught him with a mustache and all this stuff, and sort of like a 50s spy kid or something.
Right.
So, this stuff goes on and everybody knows it, but it's like,
All right, well, when I come back from the break, I got to go, but when I come back from the break, I'm going to talk about this propaganda thing because I found you something, so I'll be able to address it here.
All right.
All right, boss. Thanks. Okay, so there's this act, a couple acts. There's always a two-act play, right? In 2013, the NDAA nullified two previous U.S. laws, the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948 and the Foreign Relations Authorization Act of 1987, by making the domestic use of propaganda legal. And, of course, that's allowing things like Voice of America and Radio Free Europe and those sorts of things to be broadcast here in the U.S. The other extent of it, who knows, because they tell us, trust us, we don't provide anything but fair and balanced. I think they don't say exactly fair and balanced news, although that sometimes is propaganda too. But they say that it would be open and fair, and that the difference is they just provide uncensored news, which you wouldn't get in other countries. There's been some moves in Congress, apparently, because as some senators have pointed out, we're a lot like the Soviet Union when we are using propaganda as a tool. And so apparently it's done quite a bit these days, and we all know that, and big corporations engage in the same thing. We call it media relations. When a government does it, it's propaganda. And, of course, in this day and age, by the way, folks, your Facebook friend, your Twitter buddy, they may not even exist. They may just be some guy in a cubicle somewhere working for the Chinese government, the U.S. government, or whoever's paying the bill at the exact moment, or even Amway or AT&T. So be careful. Ron, you're on WHP 580. 540-0580. What's going on, Ron?
Hello?
Yep, you, Ron.
Okay. I have a right-of-way situation. When I bought my property, I had joint right-of-way, and I have a deed for it.
Okay.
The people that I shared the right-of-way with sold their property. A developer came in. He purchased the property and subdivided. In that process of subdivision, he submitted a plan, and the township asked for additional right-of-way, which he granted to the township. A portion of that right-of-way that he deeded was mine, or joint right-of-way. Can he do that without my permission?
Well, he can do it. Whether it's valid or not, it's an interesting question. So he's trying to give permission to go across a joint right-of-way.
Yes, he's given that right-of-way, a portion of that right-of-way to the township. He dedicated it to them, and they've accepted it.
Right, that's an interesting question. I guess the question would be whether it changes the use and nature of the right-of-way. That would be one element. Off the top of my head, that's an interesting question. So I've got a right-of-way where we both have deeded interests in it.
Yes.
And he's breaking off part of his deeded interest, essentially, and deeding that to the township.
Correct.
I think sometimes yes and sometimes no. Now, what's the effect of this?
Well, it basically no effect. Now, it's at the end of the driveway, the joint right-of-way that goes out onto the township road, but it does give the township authorization at any time they want to come in and do something to that, add a shoulder or put something in, drainage, they can do that without my permission.
Because they're using his permission to do it.
Correct, and it clearly states on the deed that both of us have access to that right-of-way.
Right. Well, they can't.
My property over his property to the township road.
They cannot extinguish your right-of-way. Okay, that's the one thing they can't do. So nothing they do can be said to or, in effect, diminish what you had, okay?
Okay.
The question is, by adding the township or giving the township access over his right-of-way, has he diminished what you had? And I think that might be what the crux is. I'm just thinking out loud here. And so if I have a right-of-way and I let my buddy use it all the time, I guess I'm not diminishing your use of the right-of-way, right?
Correct.
So if my township happens to also be my buddy, and I just formalize it. So my guess is the answer is there's nothing you can do about it unless and until something is changed about it or they try to alter the nature of the right-of-way some way that infringes upon your use of it. On the other hand, you might make an argument, I don't know, if the township were to start to change the nature or quality of the right-of-way, then that might be another argument too. If they somehow decided to co-locate a barn nearby and start taking commercial trucks across it or something, there might be an issue there. But
what about compensation? Just compensation. If a government takes a piece of land, now he's given his land, his right of way away, but I did not give mine.
Yeah, but I don't know who gave anything away. That's what I'm saying. Did it diminish anything in any way, shape, or form?
Well, it's not so much diminished, but what about the case of the township having paid me for just compensation for the land they took?
Well, what I'm trying to say is, if they haven't diminished your rights in the land in any way, shape, or form, they may not have taken anything. In other words, they didn't take anything from you, let's say. They took from him, and they worked out a private deal about it. And that's why I'm asking if it diminished anything for you and trying to think that through.
No, it really doesn't diminish unless, in the future, the township decides to do something.
Right, and that's when I'm thinking maybe you may be able to argue that there's actually a taking at that point. And so that's what I'm unclear about.
Okay.
And I'd have to do a little research. And so, this is just one of these ones where you kind of got me doing the I'll think it out loud and tell you what I think the general precepts are, right?
Mm-hmm.
But some judge in 1948 or 1702 or 2013 may have already written an appellate opinion that says, generally we would say that you have to have some diminishment, but where the right-of-ways are meted and bound on a deed, we'll figure that adding a third party to it or trying to transfer it, changes its nature by operation, and therefore it is some level of diminishment, even if there's no practical effect. So sometimes you have to prove what happened, and sometimes we just presume something happened.
Okay.
But I wouldn't know the answer to which one it is. And I could be dead wrong completely because I'm just analogizing this through in my head right now.
Okay. Well, there was a small portion of right-of-way there at one time, but now it's a couple hundred square feet more right-of-way that was given, and it's just through this 20-foot section that comes out onto the road.
Right. Nothing's changed on your property, right?
Correct.
And that's the interesting question. I don't know the answer, my friend, at least not for free.
Okay, well, thank you for taking my call.
All right, no problem. And these are actually very typical, little problems, because here's what happens. It's irritating at some level, right?
Yes.
At another level, it may not make a difference, and then you go, why would I want to pay this crazy lawyer to figure this out for me so he can just tell me yay or nay? Why don't I wait until there's a problem? And, of course, if you wait too many years till the problem develops and the other side says, well, he might have had a defense back then, but now he's stopped, or the doctrine of laches applies, or through the concept of adverse possession, we've now, fill in the blank because some defenses arise. But on the other hand, you got to ask yourself, if it's making no practical effect and doesn't look like in the short haul it's going to make a practical effect to the value of your land, may not be a good investment to, have me experiment.
Well, would there be any recourse against the surveyor that did not do...
Well, if the survey's wrong, that's a whole separate issue, yeah.
Well, that's a whole different issue, but they do have some mistakes on them. But the fact that he did not do his research or due diligence in looking for all the deeds, he should have known that was a joint right-of-way.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I'm just trying to figure out if that creates a problem or not. And so somebody tried to deed or pass on part of their joint right away. You're right. That may per se diminish it. And then the recourse for you is against the person or people who did it. And then they go back to the guy who told them it was okay to do it and add them as a defendant.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
All right, boss.
Appreciate the information.
540-0580. Carrie.
Hello there. I have a question. My husband and I are putting together a Christian youth conference, and we're having it at a church, but the church itself is not putting it on. We're bringing it to them.
Okay.
They're helping. But my husband and I are just two people doing this. We're not a nonprofit. We don't have a 501c or whatever it is. And I'm wondering if we're going around asking businesses if they would support this conference and sponsor it financially. Is there any way for us to encourage them to do that? I don't know how they would write that off.
Well, that's a question for them because, charitable donations usually have to be made to a bona fide charity of some sort. Mm-hmm. So what you might want to do is find some religious charity, okay? I say find some religious charity. Find one to work with under their umbrella, if that makes sense. Uh-huh. Have them, accept the donations and finance this effort with you guys as the volunteers. Or the other option would be to go see somebody about setting up a not-for-profit entity. But I don't think people can just declare what you're doing to be charitable on their own and take a deduction. But a CPA would have to answer that question as what avenues there might be around that.
Okay. Well, our initial thought was to ask the church that's hosting this, could we, if we get big donations, could we run it through? And they're really not wanting to do that. So I thought, there's some way.
Well, and they probably don't want to complicate their own situation. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, I understand.
Yeah, and as you know, there's a lot of scrutiny that goes into these things these days. So.
Sure. Well, we looked into this 501c. I think if that's the right name. Mm-hmm. And it seems so complicated. You need lawyers.
Mm-hmm. You need lawyers, or you need a CPA. I always tell people to go see a CPA that does this stuff.
Right.
All right.
So, all right. Well,
I know
so
it's a pain. Trust me.
All right. Bye-bye.
If you want to do something good, they make it hard. 540-0580. Get back from the break. We'll keep taking your legal questions. All kinds of stuff going on backstage here. Mainly my Arby's. It's the breakfast of champions. Or lunch, as the case may be. I'm going to call it brunch. I'm going to maybe take lunch and breakfast and put them together and invent the word brunch. You have my permission to use that, listeners. Beer and cigars. Also my favorite lunches. Harrisburg Beer and Cigar is a official sponsor of the show, and of course they have wonderful cigars, a huge selection. So get on over to Union Deposit Road, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Check it out. And if you want to call in at some point, if you've been to their humidor and you've seen it, and you want to describe it so people will believe me how awesome it is, do that because I want some feedback on this because. Everybody, when I first say to them, well, Harrisburg Beer and Cigar, and I say it's a beer distributorship, they go, wow, cigars, beer distributors. Beer distributors for the last, 15, 20 years have carried cigars, but they haven't been known to be aficionados, and they haven't been known to host, for instance, major cigar makers and events every other week or so, and have a beautiful lounge filled with very intelligent people who like to point out all the mistakes I make on the air. So anyhow, get over there to Harrisburg Beer and Cigar. When you get there, tell them Carl sent you. I've been sampling some of their Moosehead and Otter Creek and Star Hill and other things lately. And I will continue to sample those beers and tell you as much about them as I can. Also, I want to remind you about RJ Gold. If you need to liquidate an estate or business, I recommend you call RJ Gold Auctions. He can buy outright or sell your items at auction. RJ Gold can be reached at 645-0061. He purchases outright items such as medals, pins, patches, tokens, awards, and badges, and most historical collectibles. He can pay you right away. RJ Gold, 645-0061, 3712 North 6th Street in Harrisburg. PA licensed auctioneer number AU005798. And I'm just glad the government makes us read these numbers and digits and widgets and everybody's licensure. Same thing with the port contractors. Nonetheless, RJ Gold, 645-0061. And, you need to get auction off an estate or you're moving grandma into the nursing home And yes, you listening, that's you. Your kids are planning on moving you, so get ready. Call RJ. He's a good guy. Also, CDL Labor Logistics, who has that thumping, pumping ad on here, is looking for drivers. And I think they told me to say it's no touch. They've got no touch jobs available for people with clean records. And apparently that means you don't have to pick the boxes up. You just pull up to the facility or the warehouse as the truck driver, and you're not expected to be humping the boxes around the warehouse. So apparently that's a big deal. CDL Labor Logistics, call 866-293-1880. Again, 866-293-1880. And, of course, you contact me on Facebook or you contact us here. When you call in, we can give you that information as well. 540-0580. Robert, you've been holding the longest. Hey, Robert.
Hey, how you doing, Carl?
Good.
Hey, I was calling. We had with the storm last night, about an 80-foot pine tree that I thought was on our property took a direct hit from lightning, and it's split to the point where it's dangerous and has to be cut down as soon as possible. But as I was looking at it and figuring out, how much I was going to have to pay for it, if I stand in the middle of the pine tree and walk straight back, it starts running into things that my neighbor on the side of me has in their backyard.
Right.
So then I wondered, well, is it even mine? Or maybe a portion of it's mine. I don't know. But since it's a danger, instead of battling back and forth whose responsibility it is, because if it falls, it's going to fall on my house.
Right.
If I were to just pay and have it cut down, is there anything that I should do in those steps beforehand to...
I'd just talk with the neighbor and get a general understanding between the two of you, so that they're on board. If they're opposed, then it might be time to try to figure things out there. People are weird about trees. We call them tree huggers. I don't know. There's all kinds of weirdness about trees. I used to be, growing up, I went to a church that had a giant tree right by the side of the church, and all the women who were older than Methuselah remembered the tree from back when they used to park their horses and buggies out in front of the church, Yeah. So when the tree was dying and needed to be taken down, they couldn't get a vote. So some deacons had to come in the middle of the night and chop the cherry tree down, so to speak, and it became a major fiasco, because some people insist that trees, no matter how damaged, dead, or in danger of falling upon them, should never be cut down. So I would do that just to clear things so that there's no misunderstandings about what's going on. Mm-hmm. And if they are okay with it, the other thing I would tell you to do, if you have homeowners insurance, you might want to contact them. Some of the policies I've seen have coverage for shrubs and trees and brush if they're damaged by, say, lightning. Not by wind, but by lightning.
Okay, and I believe, we rent, but it's from a close family member, so, it's basically ours because we're dealing with them to get it taken care of. But
right.
They called their insurance agent. Insurance agent said one of the things to figure out whether it's on the property or not, because when you observe the property, it's not, clearly part of the property. So they said that they would have to have a survey to figure out whose responsibility it is. And
it may be something that they would pay for, so.
Oh, okay.
If they made a claim.
If it would damage the home, even though it's not on our property, they may still take care of it.
Yeah, especially because, if you ever notice, they'll replace so if anybody got some hail strikes, when you get these hail strikes on your roof, they'll come out and take a roof that looks really good and replace it only because the insurance company knows that paying $10,000 to replace a side of roofing on a building is cheaper now than to wait 5 years till the water infiltrates. So Same thing with a tree that might fall. They sometimes will make a judgment call and take it down.
Okay, and worst comes to worst, that doesn't happen. Neighbor's unresponsive. I have to pay for it to fix it right now since it's a safety issue. Would there be anything other than saying, "Hey, look, this is what happened. I had to pay for it because nobody was."
Right. I think you'd be fine with that. And here's the other reason why you pay a professional to do it. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
If you say, "Carl, I've got some Coors Lights and some Miller High Lifes," and you come over and we'll get all drunked up and take down the tree, and that seems like a great idea to me too. So, we get out there and we start hacking and waxing away on the thing, and it falls on somebody or the neighbor's property or whatever we damage. We're going to be responsible for it. But taking that
I'm not going to try to cut it.
Well, no, I understand. And I'm saying it's a delegable duty. So when you hire that guy to do it, when you hire Jack's Tree Service or whoever, he becomes responsible for any damage that occurs, not you. And just because you hired Jack doesn't mean you're in any trouble unless you knew him to be, something wrong with him. But as long as you in good faith hire an independent contractor to do something, you delegate the negligence problems.
Okay, well, that brings up another question. You use the word hire. Well, he could come out and give me an estimate, and I say, that looks good, let's do it. At that point, he's hired. But does that responsibility not fall on him until they actually start working on it?
Right. It's his negligence in working on it.
Okay.
Although here's, that scenario could occur when you say, Jack, I'm going to hire you, here's some money. And he says, well, I'll tell you what, you don't probably need to do this right away. We got a few weeks, so I'll come back. That might implicate his negligence if he should have said to you, I'm really busy right now, I can't do it right away, but just from looking at it, I can tell you it's going to fall in the next 3 days.
Right.
So that might be some negligent delay or something. But anyhow, that's always a good reason. People always forget. They think they save $5 by doing something themselves, but they forget that there's a way of insuring yourself against liability by contracting the event out.
Yeah, well, I think if I cut it down, I'm pretty sure I'd kill myself in the process, so I really wouldn't have to worry about that.
I know a guy I knew a guy that killed himself cutting down a tree. And the thing is, if you don't know what you're doing, and I'm not going to claim to be an expert at it, but we did a few over the years, and there's lots of little things that people do to make sure they fall in a certain direction and they don't kick out and whack the lumberjack. But even the professionals occasionally get tangled up. So.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the help and listen to the program a lot. I like it. They're doing a good job, and thanks for the advice.
Thank you very much. Good luck with that tree. 540-0580. Let's see who we got here. John. John.
Oh, John. Is this me?
That's you. Well, maybe it's you.
Well, this is John from the Methuselah Club. I was wondering if you'd ever heard of this. This year will go down in history. For the first time, a civilized nation has full gun registration. Our streets will be safer, our police more efficient, and the world will follow us, our lead into the future. Adolf Hitler, passing of the Germans' Weapons Act, 1935.
Now, I have heard that before, and I'll tell you what, we actually posted that on Facebook and got a discussion going. And there's some controversy on whether Hitler actually said that or not, okay?
Well, that's true. That's what I wondered, is it really historical or not?
And here's the answers that I found when I researched it. What I found is that he most likely didn't say those exact words because it wasn't Hitler who disarmed the German citizens. It was the government before him. It was the democratic government before him. And so, remember when the Nazis took over and forced out the democracy, the Weinberg Republic was there before. And so, anyhow, long story short, the government, a benign government, although ineffectual and backwards government, was the one who couldn't feed their people, was the one who went in and disarmed the people as part of what they thought at those time was good governance, which then allowed, because Germany became a giant gun-free zone, much like Chicago, that made it available for guys like Hitler to take over. And then when they started doing things like exterminating Jewish citizens and other, quote, undesirables, end quote, they had no weapons to fight back with. So the irony is, probably the better lesson is, it wasn't actually Hitler who disarmed it, but it was probably the disarming of Germany that made it possible for Hitler and his thugs to take over the country as easily as they did once they took over the power.
I know that 10 years later, if 1935 had anything to do with this, Germany was occupied, and I was there.
And what'd you think?
Huh?
What'd you think of Germany in those days?
Oh, it was nice over there, just like being here.
Yeah.
We were up near Wessel, Germany, across the Rhine River. I was with the 17th Airborne.
Okay.
We were the first people in force to go into Germany. I don't think in history there was anyone did that before.
Yeah, now historically the Germans didn't let anybody in, and they used to frustrate the Romans to no end.
I know our particular thing was called Operation Varsity, 17th Airborne Division, and British 2nd and other people,
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much. I got to go to break.
Okay.
And
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for everything. All right. Take care. Oh, let's see. Just a little warning I was reading here. Hot cars kill dogs. Don't leave your dog even for a minute. I mean, a minute? What if I'm just going to the Mac machine, right? I mean, I pull up to the Mac machine, I get out of the car, I walk up to the Mac machine, I leave my dog in the car. Oh, boy, am I going to hell? I don't know. Probably could leave the air conditioner on. But no, seriously, if you do leave your dog in the car right now on days like today, you got to be a little nuts because my recommendation for people that think it's okay to do that should just turn their car off and sit in it with their dog until one of the two of you passes out, and then decide if that's really a good idea. Hopefully you don't pass out first, but you get my point. It just doesn't make sense. So I like that for saying the hot cars kill dogs. I'm just imagining like a Bentley or a Ferrari or something just running over a little puppy dog when I hear the slogan. But then I saw the picture and I understand what they're talking about. So a picture is really worth 1,000 words, especially when you're dealing with somebody of my mindset. Tim, you're on WHP 580. What's going on?
Oh, hi, Carl. This spring I was given a judgment, and I have full guardianship over my father's affairs.
Okay.
Now, the proceedings started in the fall, and the point I'm driving at is it was done in the state of New York where he used to live.
Okay.
Well, since the first of the year and for the rest of his life, he's living in an assisted living area close to our area here. So do I need to run that agreement by anybody in the state?
Well, the short answer is they should give full force and effect to the order from it's a court order you have ultimately, right?
Right.
They should give full force and effect to that.
Okay.
If somebody didn't want to do that, we could domesticate it.
Okay.
Which would be basically to file something in the courthouse here saying, Judge, could you enter a similar order? But then again, the process being what it is, the judge is going to then want to have some, procedural due process. So he'd appoint a guardian ad litem for your father, and then they would help make a decision on whether to simply adopt New York's order, or whether there would be some reason to overturn it. But I don't think it would be a big deal. But it should just get what we call comity, which is recognition based on the fact that a court in another state has already made a determination. But I can imagine some bank or some facility somewhere saying, well, it's not a Pennsylvania order, and we're worried about that.
Yeah, I'm thinking unless something like that comes up, I might just let it go. I've already had to use it for medical purposes,
Gotcha. Yeah, I would. As long as it's working, ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right. Okay, well, I just thought I'd double-check, though.
All right. Take care, man.
Thank you, sir.
540-0580. Dave, you're on the air.
Okay, just call in. Yeah, Carl, how you doing?
Good.
Hey, I just wanted to make a quick comment. I was listening to the airborne guy in the 17th Airborne when he was talking about Operation Varsity, and you made a comment that the Germans don't usually let people into their territory. Well, Napoleon burnt Berlin to the ground.
True.
Yeah, but that was obviously before Germany was actually the modern state that it is, which happened in 1871 after the Franco-Prussian War.
Yeah, back before that, you go way back, it was, 700 separate kingdoms at one point?
Thank you. Yeah, actually it was a bunch of city-states. Thank you. And they really didn't always get along. For example, right before the Franco-Prussian War, Moltke and Bismarck were concerned that Bavaria might join on the side of the French because they were predominantly Catholic. So they did get their butts kicked several times.
Yeah, it's like German pride here. You're really interfering with my false sense of history of us ruling the world for 1,000 years or some such thing.
Yeah, well, I got a lot of crowd in me, too, don't worry. But I'm more Irish, so...
Oh, don't even get me started there.
Yeah, I'm just a stickler for truth when it comes to history,
Yeah, no, and I think I meant that more just in the general sense, unlike Poland, where people marched in and out every 3 weeks since Dawn Memorial, that Germany, at least at some point, was not easily conquered.
Yeah, when the Prussians Barbarossa crusaded against the Slavs many times, and they weren't always successful there.
No, I think, well, that area is traded back and forth, so it reminds me of talking about German pride getting Alsace-Lorraine back from the French at some point.
Yeah, and actually Bismarck was against that because he didn't want to make France a permanent enemy, a permanent nemesis. And but when the younger Kaiser, Wilhelm II, came in, he got new advisors, and that the rest is history, as we say.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, Carl.
All right, Dave.
Have a good one.
540-0580. Shane, what is that crazy buzzing? Can you hear that? You can't hear that over there? Huh. We just got something buzzing over here. I don't know. I'm getting to be like Durgan now. Which, by the way, that reminds me of Bob Durgan's retirement celebration, August 2nd from 3 to 6 at the Radisson in Camp Hill. There's no tickets needed. It's free, so you just show up, wear your cowboy boots and your hat. August 2nd from 3 to 6 at the Radisson Camp Hill. Hi, Jill. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you, Carl?
Not too bad. What's going on?
Well, I love to listen to your show, and this is actually my second call to you in like 2 months.
Ooh.
So I love
We're going steady.
I listen to your expertise and your advice. Take it all in. So here's my question. In today's world, when there's custody involved with a child, if the child reaches a certain age, do they ever look at it where that child may choose to maybe increase being with one parent versus the other, change school district, even though it may be just a couple towns over from the school district they're in now?
The Pennsylvania says that there are 16 factors to consider for custody.
Okay.
The first 15 are actually factors. The 16th is any other thing that would be important in this particular case. So it's like the catch-all factor.
Okay.
Out of those 15 factors, one of them is the preference of the child, and I believe it actually says the well-reasoned preference of the child.
Okay.
And we have case law that says that a child's change in preference alone is a change in circumstance which would warrant a change in custody.
Well, I'm going to tell you, when his father and I separated and went through the divorce, it was a very nasty, ugly divorce. We actually, in our court conciliation, were ordered to go counseling.
Right, right.
We fought over him so much. It ended up,
Shoot fast.
I'm sorry?
Go fast. The music's up.
We ended up I ended up with like 68% custody. He has, the other.
Gotta go, Jill. See you guys after the break. I'll be back for an hour.